I stood there in the pouring rain, clutching my 3-month-old son Noah against my chest as my husband Ethan hurled our suitcase into the muddy driveway. The sound of it hitting the ground mixed with the thunder overhead, but nothing could drown out his voice as he screamed at me from the doorway. "Get out! Both of you! I never want to see your face again!" Behind him, I could see his sister Brenda standing in the warm glow of the hallway, her arms crossed and a satisfied smile playing at the corners of her mouth. The same woman who had just finished destroying my life in front of 50 guests at my son's baptism party. The same woman who had orchestrated everything from the very beginning. My legs gave out beneath me and I sank to my knees on the wet pavement, one hand protecting Noah's tiny head while my whole body shook with sobs. This was not how my life was supposed to turn out. This was not the future Leo had promised me that summer evening by the lake. But before I tell you how I ended up here, on my knees in the rain with nowhere to go and a baby who depended entirely on me, I need to tell you everything. Every betrayal, every lie, every moment that led to this breaking point, because this story doesn't start with Ethan throwing me out. It starts with love, with hope, and with a man named Leo Martinez who made me believe in forever. If you want to hear how I survived this nightmare, how I fought back against the people who destroyed everything I loved, and how I finally found justice, then please hit that like button and subscribe. Drop a comment below telling me what you would have done in my situation. Now let me take you back to where it all began. It was the summer of 2019 when I met Leo. I was 24 years old, working as a bookkeeper for a small accounting firm in Riverside, a town so small that everyone knew everyone's business. My grandmother had raised me after my parents died in a car accident when I was 7, and she was my whole world. We lived in a modest 2-story house on Maple Street that had been in our family for 3 generations. Leo worked as a project manager for Porter Construction, the biggest building company in town. He was 32, with dark hair that curled slightly at the ends when it got too long, and eyes the color of warm honey. I met him when his company hired our firm to review their quarterly taxes. He came into the office one Tuesday afternoon in July, and I remember thinking I had never seen someone smile quite like that, like he found joy in everything. "You're Clara, right?" he asked, extending his hand across my desk. "I'm Leo Martinez. They told me you're the best with numbers." His hand was warm and calloused from years of construction work, and when he smiled at me, something in my chest tightened in the most wonderful way. What started as professional meetings over spreadsheets and tax documents slowly became lunch dates at the little diner on Main Street, then dinner at the Italian restaurant by the river. Then long walks through the park where he would tell me about his dreams of starting his own construction company someday, one that treated workers fairly and built homes that families could actually afford. "I believe in building things that last," he told me one evening as we sat on a bench watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of orange and pink. "Not just buildings, Clara, relationships, family, a life that means something." By September, I was completely in love with him. But there was one problem. Leo insisted we keep our relationship secret. "It's complicated," he explained when I asked why we couldn't tell people. "Rick Snyder, my business partner, he's got his hands in everything at Porter Construction. The man's shady as hell, Clara. I'm working on one last deal with him, and once it's done, once I have proof of what he's been doing, I'm out. Then we can go public. I'll get down on one knee right in the middle of town square if you want." I believed him. God, how I believed him. We spent that fall sneaking around like teenagers, meeting at the lake after dark where no one would see us, texting in code. Stolen kisses in his truck parked on back roads. It felt romantic at the time, like we were the only 2 people in the world who mattered. The last time I saw Leo alive was on a Friday evening in early November. We met at our usual spot by the lake, and he seemed anxious, kept checking his phone. "What's wrong?" I asked, taking his hand. "Rick's getting suspicious," Leo said, running his other hand through his hair. "I think he knows I've been digging into the company finances. There's money missing, Clara. A lot of money. And I think it goes higher than just Rick." "Higher? What do you mean?" "Brenda Porter," he said quietly, "Ethan's sister. She's the one who really runs that company, even though Ethan inherited it from their father. I think she's been embezzling funds for years, and Rick's been helping her cover it up." My blood ran cold. Brenda Porter was one of the most respected women in Riverside. She chaired the hospital board, organized charity events, and everyone thought she was a saint for taking care of her younger brother Ethan after their parents died. "Leo, that's serious. You need to be careful." "I know, baby. That's why after this last project wraps up next week, I'm taking all my evidence straight to Ethan. He deserves to know what his sister's doing to his company. He pulled me close and kissed my forehead. And then I'm done with Porter Construction. We'll start fresh, just you and me. Maybe I'll finally get to meet that grandmother of yours you're always talking about. She'd love you, I whispered against his chest. Not as much as I love you. He tilted my chin up and looked into my eyes. Clara Martinez. Has a nice ring to it, don't you think? That was the last conversation we ever had. 3 days later, on Monday morning, I was at work when Maya Chen, my best friend and coworker, burst into my office, her face pale. Clara, turn on the news, now. I grabbed the remote and switched on the small TV we kept in the break room. The local news anchor's solemn face filled the screen as a headline scrolled across the bottom. Tragedy at Porter Construction Site. 1 worker dead. My coffee mug slipped from my hands and shattered on the floor. At approximately 8:30 this morning, scaffolding collapsed at the Riverside Mall expansion project, killing 32-year-old Leo Martinez instantly. Company representatives say the incident appears to be the result of improper safety protocols. An investigation is ongoing. The world stopped spinning. I couldn't breathe, couldn't think, couldn't process what I was hearing. Maya was saying something, her hands on my shoulders, but I couldn't hear her over the roaring in my ears. Leo was dead. The man who was supposed to be my future, the man who made me believe in love again, after losing my parents, was gone. I don't remember much of the next few days. Maya drove me home. My grandmother held me while I cried until I had no tears left. The whole town was talking about the accident, about poor Leo Martinez, who was such a hard worker, such a tragedy, such a shame. The funeral was held on Thursday. I sat in the back of the church, trying to be invisible, trying not to draw attention to the fact that my heart had been ripped out of my chest. I watched as Ethan Porter gave a speech about what a valued employee Leo had been, how the company took full responsibility and would be implementing new safety measures. But it was Brenda Porter who caught my attention. She stood next to her brother, dressed in an elegant black suit, her face the picture of sympathy. But when she glanced around the church, her eyes landed on me for just a moment, and I swear I saw something flicker there, something cold and calculating. After the service, Rick Snyder, Leo's so-called business partner, approached the front and spoke with the pastor. I couldn't hear what they were saying, but Maya, who had positioned herself closer, came back to me with a troubled expression. "Clara, something's not right," she whispered. "I just heard Rick telling someone that Leo had been acting erratic lately, making mistakes on the job. But that doesn't match what you told me about him." "Leo wasn't erratic," I said, my voice hollow. "He was careful, meticulous. There's no way he would have ignored safety protocols." Maya squeezed my hand. "I believe you, and I think we need to look into this more carefully." But before we could do anything, my world shattered again. 2 weeks after Leo's funeral, I woke up feeling violently ill. At first, I thought it was grief, my body's physical response to the trauma. But after 3 days of vomiting every morning, my grandmother insisted I see a doctor. The pregnancy test came back positive. I was 6 weeks along. I sat in the doctor's office, staring at the little plus sign, and I didn't know whether to laugh or cry. A piece of Leo was still with me, growing inside me. But he would never get to meet his child, never get to see those first steps or hear that first word. Our baby would grow up without a father. "Clara, sweetheart," my grandmother said that evening as we sat in the kitchen, her weathered hands wrapped around a cup of tea. "This baby is a blessing. We'll figure this out together, just like we always do." I wanted to believe her. I really did. But 2 days later, everything fell apart. I came home from work to find my grandmother sitting at the kitchen table, her face flushed with anger, and Brenda Porter standing in our living room like she owned the place. "What's going on?" I asked, setting down my purse. "This woman," my grandmother said, her voice shaking, "has the audacity to come into my home and demand payment on a loan I never took." Brenda smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "Mrs. Garcia, I have the paperwork right here. You took out a loan against this house 6 months ago to pay for your medical bills. The payments are 3 months overdue." "That's a lie," my grandmother shouted, rising from her chair. "I never signed anything." "Grandma, please calm down," I said, moving to her side. I could see her hands trembling, could see the warning signs that her blood pressure was spiking. She'd had heart problems for years, and stress was the worst thing for her. Brenda pulled out a folder and laid papers on our coffee table. "The signature is right here. And unless you make a payment of $15,000 by the end of the month, I'm afraid I'll have no choice but to begin foreclosure proceedings. Get out." I said, my voice low and dangerous. Get out of our house right now. Brenda gathered her papers, that cold smile still on her face. I'll be in touch, Clara. By the way, I heard some interesting news about you. Pregnant, are we? And Leo's been dead, 2 weeks now? My. People will certainly have opinions about that. The threat was clear. She was going to make sure everyone knew. After she left, my grandmother collapsed into her chair, her hand pressed against her chest. Grandma! I'm fine, mija, she gasped. Just give me a moment. But she wasn't fine. That night, after I'd helped her to bed and kissed her forehead goodnight, I lay awake worrying about everything. The baby, the house, the mysterious loan that I knew in my bones my grandmother had never signed for. At 2 a.m, I heard a crash from her bedroom. I found her on the floor, clutching her chest, her lips turning blue. No, I sobbed, cradling her head in my lap while I dialed 911 with shaking hands. Stay with me, Grandma. Please stay with me. The ambulance arrived within minutes, but it was too late. The doctors said it was a massive heart attack. That sometimes these things just happen. But I knew better. I knew it was the stress, the fight with Brenda, the fear of losing our home. Brenda Porter had killed my grandmother as surely as if she'd put a gun to her head. I was completely alone. No Leo, no grandmother, no family at all except for the tiny life growing inside me. The day after my grandmother's funeral, Brenda showed up at the house again, this time with a sheriff's deputy and more paperwork. I'm sorry for your loss, Clara, she said, though her tone suggested she was anything but sorry. However, with your grandmother's passing, this property now transfers to me as per the loan agreement. You have 30 days to vacate. This is insane, I said, staring at the papers she thrust into my hands. My grandmother never took out a loan. These signatures are forged. That's a serious accusation, Brenda said smoothly. If you'd like to challenge this in court, you're welcome to hire a lawyer, though I imagine that might be difficult given your current financial situation. She was right, and she knew it. I had no money for a lawyer, no family to turn to, and I was pregnant with a dead man's baby. That evening, Maya came over and we pored over the paperwork together. This is fraud, Maya said, her jaw clenched. The dates don't even match up, Clara. These documents claim your grandmother took out the loan in May. But look, the notary seal is dated June 15th, and the interest rate they're charging is illegal in this state. What can I do? I don't have money to fight this. Maya was quiet for a moment, then she looked up at me, with determination in her eyes. We're going to figure this out, I promise you, Clara. We're going to expose what Brenda and Rick did to Leo, and we're going to get your house back. But before we could do anything, Brenda made her next move. 1 week later, I was at the grocery store when I overheard 2 women whispering in the cereal aisle. Did you hear about Clara Garcia? Pregnant with Leo Martinez's baby, and he wasn't even cold in the ground before she was showing. I heard she was seeing him while he had a girlfriend. No morals, that one, just like her mother, I heard. I stood there frozen, a box of crackers in my hand, feeling like I'd been slapped. How did everyone know? Leo and I had been so careful. As I turned to leave, I nearly ran into Ethan Porter. He was tall, with sandy blonde hair and blue eyes that seemed perpetually sad. I'd seen him around town, of course, but we'd never spoken. I'm sorry, I mumbled, trying to step around him. Wait, he said quietly. You're Clara, right? Clara Garcia? I nodded, bracing myself for whatever judgment was coming. But instead, his expression softened. I'm very sorry for your loss. Both losses. Your grandmother was a kind woman. I was so surprised by the genuine sympathy in his voice that tears sprang to my eyes. Thank you, I whispered. He hesitated, then said, If you need anything, please don't hesitate to ask. I know my sister has been handling the property situation, but if there's anything I can do to help. Before I could respond, he was gone, disappearing down another aisle like he was uncomfortable with his own kindness. That night, as I sat in what had been my grandmother's house, surrounded by half-packed boxes, my phone rang. It was Brenda. Clara, I've been thinking, she said, her voice dripping with false sweetness. You're in a difficult position, and I'd like to help. Help? I repeated incredulously. My brother Ethan, he's been so lonely since his wife passed away 2 years ago. He needs someone to take care of him, and you need a home for that baby of yours. It seems like a mutually beneficial arrangement. My stomach dropped. What are you suggesting? A marriage, of course. You'd have security, a father for your child, and Ethan would have companionship. Everyone wins. That's insane, I said. I don't even know your brother. Then get to know him? Brenda said, her tone hardening. Unless you'd prefer to be homeless with a newborn baby? The choice is yours, Clara, but I need an answer by tomorrow evening. She hung up before I could respond. I called Maya immediately and told her about Brenda's proposal. That's sick, Maya said. She's trying to control you, Clara. Don't do it. But what choice do I have? I asked, my hand resting on my small baby bump. I'm 3 months pregnant, Maya. I have no money, no family, nowhere to go, and I can't let my baby be born homeless. Then come stay with me, Maya offered. My apartment is small, but we'll make it work. I considered it, but Maya's studio apartment was barely big enough for her, let alone me and a baby, and I couldn't ask her to shoulder that burden. The next evening, Brenda arrived at the house with Ethan. He looked uncomfortable, his hands shoved in his pockets, his eyes not quite meeting mine. Ethan has something to ask you, Brenda prompted. He cleared his throat. Clara, I know this is unconventional, but would you consider marrying me? I know we don't know each other well, but I promise I'd treat you and your baby with respect. You'd have a home, security, no expectations beyond that. I looked at this sad man who was clearly being manipulated by his sister just as much as I was, and I thought about my baby. About giving my child a stable home, a name, a future. Can I think about it? I asked. Of course, Ethan said quickly. Take all the time you need. But Brenda cut in. Actually, we need an answer tonight. The foreclosure proceedings begin tomorrow if Clara is still considered the homeowner. But if she's my sister-in-law, well, that changes things. I saw the trap she was setting. If I said no, I'd be homeless. If I said yes, I'd be under her control, but at least my baby would have a roof over their head. Okay, I whispered. Yes, I'll marry you. Ethan's expression was unreadable, but Brenda smiled like a cat that had caught a mouse. The wedding took place 2 weeks later at the courthouse. No guests, no celebration, just a legal document that bound me to a stranger. Ethan was polite, but distant, and I couldn't blame him. Neither of us wanted this marriage. I moved into the Porter House, a massive Victorian mansion on the hill overlooking town. It was beautiful and cold and felt nothing like a home. Brenda lived there too, in the East Wing, and she made sure I understood from day one that I was there on her sufferance. This is Ethan's house, she reminded me constantly. You're a guest here, Clara, don't forget that. Ethan worked long hours at the construction company, leaving early in the morning and coming home late at night. When he was home, he was quiet, spending most of his time in his study. We barely spoke beyond pleasantries at dinner. The loneliness was crushing. I was living in a mansion, but felt more isolated than I ever had in my grandmother's small house. And I missed Leo so much it physically hurt. As my pregnancy progressed, Brenda's true cruelty emerged. She started slowly, with little comments here and there. You're showing quite early, aren't you? People will definitely be able to do the math. I hope the baby doesn't have Leo's dark coloring. That would be awkward for Ethan. You know, in my day, women who got pregnant out of wedlock had the decency to hide away. But I endured it. I had to, for my baby. Maya visited when she could, and she was still digging into the company finances, looking for proof of what Leo had discovered before he died. I'm close, Clara. She told me one afternoon as we sat in the garden. I was 7 months pregnant by then, my belly round and heavy. There are discrepancies in the books going back 3 years. Money being funneled through shell companies, and guess who's on the board of directors for those companies? Rick Snyder and Brenda Porter. You have to be careful, I warned her, if they find out you're investigating. I'm being careful, she assured me. But we're going to nail them, Clara. For Leo, for your grandmother, for you. In early April, 2 weeks before my due date, Ethan did something unexpected. He knocked on my bedroom door one evening and asked if he could come in. I got you something, he said awkwardly, holding out a wrapped box. Inside was a beautiful mobile for the baby's crib, with little wooden stars and moons hand-painted in soft colors. I made it, he admitted. In my workshop. I thought the baby might like it. Tears filled my eyes. It was the first kind gesture anyone besides Maya had shown me in months. It's beautiful, I whispered. Thank you, Ethan. He nodded and turned to leave, then hesitated. Clara, I know this isn't what either of us wanted. This marriage, I mean. But I want you to know that I'll take care of the baby. When they're born, I'll be their father in every way that matters. You have my word. It was the most he'd said to me since the wedding, and something in his voice made me believe him. "That means a lot," I said softly. Noah was born on April 22nd at 2:30 in the morning. Labor was long and difficult, but the moment I heard his first cry, everything else faded away. He was perfect. 7 pounds 6 ounces, with a dusting of dark hair and eyes that would later turn the same warm honey color as his father's. Ethan was there, waiting outside the delivery room. When the nurse brought Noah out to show him, I watched Ethan's face transform. He reached out tentatively and stroked the baby's tiny hand with one finger, and Noah wrapped his whole fist around it. "Hello, little guy," Ethan whispered, and there were tears in his eyes. For a moment, I thought maybe things would be okay. Maybe we could be a family, even if it wasn't traditional. Maybe Ethan could learn to love this baby who wasn't his by blood. But I'd forgotten about Brenda. The trouble started immediately. The first time Brenda saw Noah, her face went white and then red. "He looks just like Leo," she said flatly. "That dark hair. Those eyes. Everyone's going to know." "Know what?" I challenged, holding my son closer. "That he's mine? That's not exactly a secret." "You know exactly what I mean," she hissed. "This is humiliating for Ethan, for our family." But it got worse, much worse. Within a week, I started hearing the whispers again. At the grocery store, at the park, even at church. People talking about me, about Noah, about how I'd trapped poor Ethan Porter into raising another man's child. I knew where the rumors were coming from. Brenda was a master at manipulation, at planting seeds of doubt and letting them grow. She'd paint herself as the noble sister trying to help her brother despite his poor judgment in marrying me. Ethan started hearing them too. I could see it in the way he'd come home from work with his jaw clenched, in the way he'd look at Noah with an expression I couldn't quite read. "People are talking," he said one evening when Noah was 6 weeks old, "about us, about the baby." "I know," I said quietly, rocking Noah in my arms. "I'm sorry." "It's not your fault," he said, but his tone suggested he wasn't entirely sure of that. Things came to a head when Noah was 3 months old. Brenda insisted on throwing a baptism party at the house. I didn't want it, sensing that she was planning something, but I had no say in the matter. "It's what the family does," she said firmly. "We baptize our children at Sacred Heart Church and celebrate afterward. Ethan's child deserves the same." The way she emphasized Ethan's child made my skin crawl. The party was scheduled for a Sunday afternoon in late July. 50 guests were invited, all the most prominent families in Riverside. I dressed Noah in the white christening gown that had been in the Porter family for generations, and he looked like a little angel. The church service was beautiful. Father Michael performed the baptism, and as the holy water touched Noah's forehead, he didn't cry at all. He just looked around with those big honey-colored eyes, taking everything in. At the house afterward, I tried to enjoy the celebration. Maya was there, staying close to me like a protective shield. Ethan was being the perfect host, shaking hands and accepting congratulations. And Brenda was circulating through the crowd with a smile on her face that set my teeth on edge. I was in the kitchen, preparing Noah's bottle, when I heard Brenda's voice rising in the living room. "Everyone, if I could have your attention, please. I'd like to make a toast." My stomach dropped. I handed Noah to Maya and rushed to the doorway. Brenda stood in the center of the room, a champagne glass raised. All 50 guests had turned to look at her. "Today we celebrate the baptism of little Noah," she began. "Such a precious child, and I think it's only right that we're all honest about the circumstances of his birth." "Brenda, don't," I said, stepping into the room. But she ignored me. "You see, Noah isn't actually Ethan's biological son. His father was Leo Martinez, a worker at our company who died in a tragic accident while having an affair with Clara." Gasps rippled through the crowd. I felt like I'd been punched in the stomach. "That's not true," I said, my voice shaking. "Leo and I were together. We loved each other." "Really?" Brenda pulled out her phone. "Because I have photos here that tell a different story. Photos of Leo with his actual girlfriend at the time of his death. Photos that make it clear he was seeing multiple women." She held up the phone, and I saw images of Leo with a woman I didn't recognize. They were clearly doctored, photoshopped, but they looked real enough to the untrained eye. "That's fake," Maya shouted. "Those photos are manipulated." "And I have statements from Leo's coworkers," Brenda continued, pulling out papers. "All saying that he'd mentioned Clara was obsessed with him, that she wouldn't leave him alone. That he'd tried to let her down easy, but she wouldn't take no for an answer." "You're lying," I cried. Leo loved me. We were going to get married. Brenda turned to me with a look of pure venom. You're a liar and a manipulator, Clara Garcia. You trapped my brother into marrying you, into giving your bastard child his name. And I won't stand by and let you destroy this family any longer. The room erupted in chaos. Some guests were whispering, others were openly staring at me with disgust. I looked desperately at Ethan, pleading with him to say something, to defend me. But he just stood there, his face pale, his hands clenched into fists. And then Brenda played her final card. Ethan, sweetheart, she said, turning to her brother. You don't have to put up with this. She's made a fool of you in front of the whole town. Something in Ethan snapped. I saw it happen, saw the moment when all his pain and grief and humiliation boiled over into rage. You, he said, pointing at me. His voice was low and dangerous. You've made me a laughingstock. Ethan, please, I begged. It's not true. None of what she's saying is true. Isn't it? He stalked toward me, and I backed away instinctively. That baby looks nothing like me. Everyone can see it. Everyone knows. But you said you'd be his father, I whispered. You promised. I was trying to be a good man, he shouted. I was trying to do the right thing, but all I've done is let you make a fool of me. He grabbed the toy I'd left on the side table, the wooden mobile he'd made for Noah, and threw it against the wall. It shattered into pieces. Ethan, don't do this, Maya said, stepping forward with Noah in her arms. But he was beyond reason. He grabbed my arm, his grip tight enough to bruise, and dragged me toward the door. I was crying, begging him to stop, but he wouldn't listen. Outside, the rain had started, a summer storm rolling in fast. He threw open the door and pushed me out onto the porch. Then he went back inside and grabbed our suitcase, the one I'd never fully unpacked because some part of me had always known I didn't belong here. He threw it down the steps and it tumbled across the wet driveway, clothes spilling out into the mud. Get out, he snarled. Take that baby and get out of my sight. I never want to see either of you again. Please, I sobbed. Where am I supposed to go? I don't care. His voice cracked. You've humiliated me for the last time. You're not my wife. That's not my son. You're nothing to me. Maya appeared behind him, Noah bundled in a blanket against the rain. Ethan, you can't do this, she pleaded. It's pouring rain. There's a baby. But he just stepped back and slammed the door in our faces. I heard the lock click. Through the window, I could see all the party guests staring out at us. Some looked shocked, others satisfied. And Brenda stood in the back, her arms crossed, that cold smile on her face. I collapsed on the driveway, the rain soaking through my clothes instantly. Maya sat down next to me, sheltering Noah as best she could with her jacket. We just sat there for a moment in the storm, 2 women and a baby with nowhere to go. Come on, Maya finally said, helping me to my feet. Let's get you both out of here. We loaded the soggy suitcase into Maya's car and drove away from the Porter house. I didn't look back. I couldn't. I just held Noah close and let the tears come, mixing with the rain on my face. We ended up at Maya's tiny studio apartment. She gave me her bed and slept on the couch, and for the next few days, I was numb. I went through the motions of feeding Noah, changing him, holding him, but inside I was broken. I've lost everything, I told Maya one night as we sat in the dark, Noah finally asleep in a makeshift bassinet we'd created from a dresser drawer. My parents, my grandmother, Leo, my house, my dignity, everything. No, Maya said firmly. You haven't lost everything. You have Noah, and you have me, and you have something else too. What's that? The truth. And I'm getting close to proving it, Clara. I've been working late nights, going through every file I can access, and I found something. She pulled out her laptop and showed me a series of emails she'd recovered from the company server. Look at this. 3 days before Leo died, he sent an email to himself at his personal account. It was labeled draft in his work system, like he was planning to send it but wanted to refine it first. In it, he details everything. The embezzlement, the shell companies, Brenda's involvement, Rick's role in covering it up, everything. My heart started pounding. Can we use this? It gets better. Look at this. She pulled up a series of bank transactions. The day after Leo died, Rick Snyder received a payment of $50,000 from one of those shell companies. A payment authorized by Brenda Porter. She paid him to kill Leo, I breathed. I can't prove that in court yet, Maya admitted, but I can prove the fraud, the embezzlement, the cover-up. And once we start pulling on that thread, everything else will unravel. What do we do? Maya's eyes glinted with determination. We fight back. But we have to be smart about it. We need more evidence. And we need to present it in a way that Brenda can't talk her way out of. Over the next 3 months, Maya became a woman possessed. She worked her day job at the accounting firm, then spent her nights digging deeper into Porter Construction's finances. She enlisted help from a former FBI agent turned private investigator who owed her a favor. She tracked down workers who'd been fired from Porter Construction over the years, workers who had stories to tell about safety violations and corrupt practices. And slowly, piece by piece, we built a case. In the meantime, I focused on Noah. He was growing so fast, smiling now, reaching for things. He had Leo's eyes and his curiosity about the world. Every day I looked at him, I was reminded of why I had to keep fighting. Life in Maya's apartment was cramped but full of love. We figured out a routine. I'd take care of Noah during the day while Maya worked, and in the evenings we'd trade off so she could do her investigating. Money was tight, but Maya never complained. We're going to get through this, she'd tell me. And when we do, you're going to have everything back that they stole from you, plus interest. I started to believe her. More than that, I started to believe in myself again. I wasn't just a victim anymore. I was a mother, and I was a fighter, and I wasn't going to let Brenda Porter get away with what she'd done. The town's gossip continued, of course. Every time I went to the grocery store or the pharmacy, I could feel the stares and hear the whispers. But I held my head high and kept walking. Let them talk. Soon they'd know the truth. The breakthrough came in October, almost a year after Leo's death. Maya came home one evening practically vibrating with excitement. I got it, she said, slamming her laptop down on the tiny kitchen table. I finally got it all. Got what? Everything. The complete paper trail. Look, she opened folder after folder on her screen. Brenda has been embezzling from Porter Construction for 4 years. She's siphoned off nearly $2 million through fake vendor contracts and inflated supply costs. Rick Snyder was her accomplice. He'd approved the invoices, and they'd split the money through those shell companies. And Leo found out, I said quietly. He found out, and 3 days before he died, he'd scheduled a meeting with Ethan to tell him everything. But someone tipped off Brenda, probably Rick, and then Leo died in a very convenient accident. Maya pulled up another file. I talked to 5 workers who were at the site that day. They all said the same thing. Rick Snyder was the last person to inspect that scaffolding before Leo went up on it. And Rick left the site right before it collapsed, said he had an emergency phone call. Can we prove he tampered with it? Not directly, but I found this. She played an audio file. It was scratchy and hard to hear at first, but then I recognized Rick's voice. I did what you asked. The Martinez problem is solved. When do I get the rest of my payment? And then Brenda's voice, cold and clear. When I'm sure there's no evidence left. Did he have any files? Any documentation? I searched his truck. Nothing. If he had something, it died with him. I felt sick. They were talking about murdering Leo like it was a business transaction. Where did you get this? I asked. Maya smiled grimly. Rick's not as smart as he thinks. He was having an affair with one of the secretaries at the office. She broke it off last month after he got rough with her. When I approached her and asked if she knew anything about Rick's business dealings, she handed over recordings she'd made of his phone calls. She'd been collecting insurance, she said, in case he ever tried to hurt her. This is it, I breathed. This is enough to take them down. It's enough to get the police involved, yes, but I think we can do better than that. Maya leaned back in her chair. Porter Construction is having their annual shareholders meeting in 2 weeks. It's always a big event. All the investors, all the town's business leaders, press coverage. What if we presented all of this evidence there, in front of everyone? Brenda would never let us in. No, but Ethan might. Maya pulled up an email. I sent him a message through a dummy account, anonymous. I told him I have evidence of financial fraud at his company, and I want to present it at the shareholders meeting. I said if he's an honest man, he'll give me 10 minutes on the agenda. And? He responded an hour ago. He said yes. My hands were shaking. This was real. This was actually happening. Maya, what if it goes wrong? What if they lawyer up and nothing happens? Then we go to the police with everything we have, Maya said firmly. But Clara, this is your chance. Your chance to stand in front of everyone who judged you, everyone who whispered about you, and show them the truth. Your chance to get justice for Leo, for your grandmother, for Noah. Are you ready? I looked over at my son, sleeping peacefully in his crib. He deserved to grow up knowing his father had been a hero, not a careless worker. He deserved to know his mother had fought for him. "I'm ready," I said. The next 2 weeks were a whirlwind of preparation. Maya organized all the evidence into a presentation that was clear, concise, and devastating. We practiced my speech over and over until I could deliver it without crying. We coordinated with the private investigator to have all physical evidence ready to hand over to authorities immediately after the presentation. And we prepared for the possibility that Brenda would try to stop us by any means necessary. The night before the shareholders' meeting, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about Leo, about that last evening by the lake when he'd talked about exposing the corruption. He'd been so brave, and now it was my turn to finish what he'd started. At dawn, I got up and dressed carefully. I chose a navy blue suit that Maya had helped me buy. Simple but professional. I did my makeup, fixed my hair. I wanted to look strong, capable, like someone who couldn't be dismissed or ignored. Maya arranged for her mother to watch Noah for the day. I kissed my son goodbye, breathing in that sweet baby smell, gathering strength from his innocent trust in me. "Mama loves you," I whispered, "and I'm going to make sure you grow up in a world where the truth matters." The shareholders' meeting was held at the Riverside Convention Center. As Maya and I approached the building, I could see the parking lot was full. This was clearly a big event for the town. We checked in at the registration desk. The young woman there looked at our names on the list and her eyes widened. "You're Clara Garcia? The one who's giving the special presentation?" "That's me," I said, keeping my voice steady. "Mr. Porter said to give you this." She handed me a badge and a folder. "You're scheduled to speak right after the financial report. You'll have 15 minutes. We made our way into the conference hall. It was enormous, with tiered seating that could hold at least 200 people. Nearly every seat was full. I recognized faces from town, investors in business suits, and at the front, sitting at a long table on the raised platform, were the Porter construction executives. Brenda sat at the center in a crisp white suit, looking every inch the successful businesswoman. Rick Snyder sat to her left, checking his phone, and Ethan sat to her right, his expression unreadable. As Maya and I took our seats near the back, I saw Brenda lean over and whisper something to Ethan. He shook his head slightly, and her face hardened. The meeting began with standard corporate business. Reports on projects completed, contracts secured, financial projections. It was all very dry and professional. I barely heard any of it. My heart was pounding so hard I thought everyone in the room must be able to hear it. Then Ethan stood and approached the microphone. "Before we move to closing remarks, we have a special presentation today. Miss Clara Garcia has requested time to address the board regarding matters of company operations. In the interest of transparency, I've agreed to hear what she has to say." Brenda's head snapped toward him. "Ethan, what are you doing?" she hissed, loud enough that the microphone picked it up. "What I should have done a long time ago," he said quietly. "Listening." He gestured toward me. "Miss Garcia, the floor is yours." Maya squeezed my hand. "You've got this. I'll be right here." I stood on shaking legs and walked down the aisle toward the platform. Every eye in the room was on me. I could hear the whispers starting. "That's her. That's the one who married Ethan, and then... I heard she's homeless now, living with a friend. Poor Ethan, having to deal with this scandal." I climbed the steps to the platform and stood at the microphone. Maya was setting up her laptop to project our presentation onto the large screens on either side of the stage. I looked out at the sea of faces and found my voice. "My name is Clara Garcia Martinez. 14 months ago, the man I loved, Leo Martinez, died in what was ruled an accident at a Porter construction site. 3 weeks after his death, my grandmother died of a heart attack after being threatened with foreclosure on a fraudulent loan. I was pregnant, homeless, and desperate. I was coerced into a marriage with Ethan Porter, and then publicly humiliated and thrown out of his house along with my 3-month-old son." The whispers grew louder. Brenda started to stand, but Ethan put a hand on her arm, holding her in place. "I'm not here today to talk about my personal suffering, though I've suffered plenty. I'm here to tell you the truth about what's been happening at this company. The truth about why Leo Martinez really died, and the truth about who's been stealing from all of you." I nodded at Maya, and the first slide appeared on the screens. It was a photo of Leo, smiling in his hard hat at a construction site. Leo Martinez was a project manager with 7 years of experience. He was meticulous, careful, and dedicated to safety. In the months before his death, he discovered that money was being embezzled from Porter Construction through a network of shell companies and fraudulent vendor contracts. He documented everything and was preparing to bring his evidence to Ethan Porter. Next slide. The email Leo had written to himself, time-stamped 3 days before his death. This email details millions of dollars in fraudulent transactions. It names the people responsible for the scheme. I looked directly at Brenda as the next slide appeared, showing the flow of money from Porter Construction to the shell companies, and from there to accounts belonging to Brenda and Rick. Brenda Porter and Rick Snyder have been systematically stealing from this company for 4 years. When Leo discovered their scheme, they had him killed. The room erupted. People were shouting, some in disbelief, others in anger. Brenda shot to her feet. "This is slander. I'll have you arrested." "Sit down, Brenda," Ethan said, his voice cutting through the chaos. His face was pale, but his jaw was set. "Let her finish," I continued, my voice growing stronger with each word. The day after Leo died, Rick Snyder received a payment of $50,000 from one of these shell companies. A payment authorized by Brenda Porter. More slides, more evidence. Bank statements, forged documents, testimony from workers about safety violations. And then, Maya played the audio recording. Rick's voice filled the room. "I did what you asked. The Martinez problem is solved." Brenda's response: "When I'm sure there's no evidence left." The silence that followed was deafening. Then the room exploded again, this time with people on their feet, shouting questions, demanding answers. Rick Snyder bolted for the door, but 2 security guards blocked his path. Maya had alerted them ahead of time about what might happen. Brenda stood frozen at the table, her face white, her carefully constructed world crumbling around her. "You have no proof," she said, but her voice wavered. "Those recordings could be fake. The documents could be forged." "They're not," Ethan said, and everyone turned to look at him. He was staring at his sister with an expression of utter betrayal. "I had my own forensic accountant review everything Miss Garcia provided. It's all real, Brenda, every bit of it." He stood and walked over to stand next to me, and I was shocked to see tears in his eyes. "I'm sorry," he said, looking at me. "I'm so sorry for what I did to you. For what I said. I was angry and hurt, and I let Brenda manipulate me, but that's no excuse for how I treated you and Noah." Before I could respond, Brenda lunged at me with a scream of rage, but Ethan was faster. He stepped between us, catching his sister by the arms. "It's over, Brenda," he said. "It's over." At that moment, police officers entered the conference hall. Maya had coordinated with them to be on standby, and now they moved forward to arrest both Brenda and Rick. "Brenda Porter, Rick Snyder, you're under arrest for conspiracy to commit murder, embezzlement, and fraud," the lead detective announced. As they handcuffed Brenda, she turned to look at me one last time. Gone was the cold, calculating woman who had terrorized me for months. All I saw now was desperation and fear. "You've ruined everything," she spat. "No," I said calmly. "You ruined everything the moment you decided Leo's life was worth less than your greed." They led her and Rick away, and the room erupted in applause. People I'd never met were coming up to shake my hand, to apologize for believing the rumors, to tell me how brave I was. But all I could think about was getting back to Noah, getting back to my son and holding him tight and telling him that his father had been a hero, and now everyone knew it. Maya appeared at my side, grinning. "We did it," she said. "We actually did it." "No," I said, pulling her into a hug. "You did it. I couldn't have done any of this without you." Ethan approached us hesitantly. "Clara, could we talk, please?" I nodded, and we stepped away from the crowd to a quiet corner. "I don't know how to begin to apologize," he said. "What I did that night, throwing you out in the rain with Noah, it was unforgivable. I let Brenda poison my mind against you. I believed her lies, instead of giving you a chance to defend yourself." "Why did you let me speak today?" I asked. "You could have shut this down." "Because when I got that anonymous email about fraud in my company, I started digging myself. And I found enough to make me question everything Brenda had told me. About the company, about you, about everything." He ran a hand through his hair. "My father built this company with honest work. He'd be ashamed of what Brenda turned it into. And he'd be ashamed of how I treated you." "Ethan, Please let me finish," he said. "I want to make this right, whatever it takes. The house that was your grandmother's, the one Brenda stole with that fraudulent loan, I'm transferring it back to you. Clear title, no strings. And I'm making you a full partner in Porter Construction. You and Maya both, if she'll accept. This company needs people with integrity, and you've proven you have that in spades." I was stunned. I don't know what to say. Say you'll give me a chance to make amends. Say you'll let me be the father to Noah that I promised to be, not because I have to, but because I want to. His voice broke. That little boy deserves a father who shows up for him, and you deserve someone who respects and supports you. I thought about it for a long moment. Ethan wasn't a bad man. He was a broken man who'd been manipulated by his sister. He'd made terrible mistakes, but he was trying to make them right. It's going to take time, I said finally. A lot of time. Trust isn't something you can fix overnight. I know. I'll wait as long as it takes. Over the next few months, life slowly began to piece itself back together. Brenda and Rick went to trial and were both convicted. Brenda got 15 years for conspiracy to commit murder, embezzlement, and fraud. Rick got 20 years for actually tampering with the scaffolding that killed Leo. Their appeals were denied. The town that had shunned me suddenly couldn't apologize enough. The same people who'd whispered about me in grocery store aisles now went out of their way to tell me how sorry they were, how they should have given me the benefit of the doubt. I accepted their apologies with grace, but I didn't forget how quickly they'd turned on me. Maya did accept Ethan's offer to become a partner in the company. She had a brilliant mind for business, and together, they restructured Porter Construction from the ground up. They implemented new safety protocols, fair pay practices, and transparent accounting. The company flourished under their leadership. I moved back into my grandmother's house. Walking through those familiar rooms for the first time in over a year, I broke down crying. Maya found me sitting in the kitchen where my grandmother used to make me breakfast before school. She'd be proud of you. You know, Maya said softly. So proud. I renamed the house the Garcia home and kept everything exactly as my grandmother had left it. It was my way of honoring her memory. Ethan was true to his word. He started slowly, asking if he could visit Noah once a week, then twice a week. He'd bring toys, books, things he'd made in his workshop. He was patient and gentle, and gradually, Noah started to warm up to him. For my part, I watched carefully. I wasn't going to let anyone hurt my son ever again. But I could see that Ethan genuinely cared. When Noah took his first steps at 10 months old, he walked straight to Ethan, and I saw the joy on Ethan's face and knew it was real. A year after the trial, on a crisp autumn afternoon, Ethan asked if he could take me and Noah to the lake, the same lake where Leo and I used to meet. We spread out a blanket by the water while Noah toddled around, fascinated by the ducks. Ethan and I sat in comfortable silence, watching him play. I come here sometimes, Ethan admitted, to think, to remember what happened to Leo and make sure I never forget what my sister was capable of, what I was capable of when I let anger control me. We've all grown since then, I said. Clara, he turned to face me. I know I don't deserve another chance. I know what I did was terrible. But these past months, getting to know you, getting to be there for Noah, it's been the best part of my life. You're brilliant and strong and kind despite everything you've been through. And I've fallen in love with you. The real you, not the woman Brenda painted you to be. My heart clenched. I'd felt it too, the slow shift from tolerance to friendship to something deeper. But I was scared. Ethan, I loved Leo. Part of me will always love him. I know, and I'd never ask you to forget him. He was Noah's father, and from everything I've learned about him, he was a good man. But Clara, I'm asking if there's room in your heart for me too, not to replace him, but to build something new, something honest and real. I looked at Noah, happily chasing a butterfly through the grass. I thought about how far I'd come from that night in the rain when I thought I'd lost everything. I'd survived, I'd fought back, and I'd won, and now I had a chance at something I never thought I'd have again. Happiness. Real, genuine happiness. Yes, I said softly, there's room. Ethan's face lit up with the most beautiful smile I'd ever seen. He didn't try to kiss me, didn't push for more. He just took my hand and held it, and we sat there by the lake where Leo and I had once dreamed of our future, and I made peace with the past while looking toward a new future. We got married a year later, a real wedding this time, with Maya as my maid of honor and Noah as the ring bearer. He was 2 years old and took his job very seriously, walking down the aisle with the rings on a pillow clutched in his chubby hands. I wore a cream-colored dress and carried wildflowers, and when Ethan looked at me, I saw nothing but love and respect and gratitude. We exchanged vows we'd written ourselves, promising to be partners, to communicate honestly, to support each other's growth, and to always put Noah first. The whole town came to the wedding, a very different crowd than the one that had watched me be humiliated at Noah's baptism. This time, people celebrated with genuine joy. At the reception, I visited the table where we'd placed photos of loved ones who couldn't be there, my parents, my grandmother, and Leo. I'd chosen my favorite picture of him, the one from that last evening by the lake, his face bright with hope and love. "Thank you," I whispered, touching the frame. "For Noah. For showing me what love should look like, for being brave enough to stand up to corruption, even though it cost you everything. I promise I'll make sure Noah knows who you were, what you did, how much you loved him even before he was born." Ethan came to stand beside me. He placed his hand over mine on the frame. "We'll tell him together," he said. "Every year on his birthday, we'll tell him another story about his father. Leo Martinez will never be forgotten." That's when I knew I'd made the right choice. Ethan wasn't trying to erase Leo or replace him. He was honoring him, making sure my son grew up knowing he had two fathers who loved him. Today, 3 years after that terrible night in the rain, my life looks nothing like I imagined it would. I'm co-owner of Martinez Porter Construction, the company we renamed to honor both Leo's memory and the fresh start we're building. We employ over 100 people, and we've become known throughout the state for our ethical practices and commitment to safety. Noah is 5 years old now, smart and curious and full of joy. He has Leo's eyes and his sense of wonder about the world. He calls Ethan Daddy, and he's never known anything but love and stability. We've started telling him age-appropriate stories about Leo, about how brave he was, and Noah says he wants to build houses just like his angel daddy did. Maya is not just my business partner but truly my sister in every way that matters. She married the private investigator who helped us gather evidence against Brenda. They bought a house 2 streets over from mine, and our kids have playdates every week. My grandmother's house is filled with laughter now. Ethan moved in with me rather than asking me to live in the Porter mansion. We've made it ours, respecting its history while building new memories. We've turned my grandmother's sewing room into a nursery because I'm pregnant again, a little girl this time. We're naming her Elena Grace, after both my grandmother and Ethan's mother. Sometimes late at night, when everyone else is asleep, I sit on the porch and think about how far I've come. From that broken girl sitting in the rain with nowhere to go, to the woman I am now. Strong. Successful. Surrounded by love. I think about all the women out there who might be where I was. Trapped in toxic situations, convinced they have no options, afraid to fight back against people with more power and money. And I want them to know something important. You are stronger than you think. You deserve better than you're getting. And when you're ready to stand up and fight for yourself, you'll be amazed at what you can accomplish. It won't be easy. There will be moments when you want to give up, when the fight seems too hard and the odds seem impossible. But on the other side of that fight is freedom, is peace, is the life you deserve. For me, it was about more than revenge, though I won't lie. Seeing Brenda in handcuffs was satisfying. It was about justice, about making sure Leo didn't die in vain, about giving my son a future where the truth mattered and bad people were held accountable. And I got all of that. I got justice. I got my home back. I got a partnership in a company I'm proud of. I got true love with a man who respects me and cherishes me. I got to watch the people who tried to destroy me face consequences for their actions. But most importantly, I got myself back. The version of me that I'd lost somewhere along the way, buried under grief and trauma and despair, I found her again, and she was stronger than I ever imagined. So here's my question for you. Are you living the life you deserve? Or are you settling for less because you're afraid of what it might cost to fight for more? Have you been silenced by people who benefit from your silence? Have you let someone convince you that their version of events is the truth, even when your gut tells you otherwise? If any of this resonates with you, I hope my story gives you courage. Courage to speak up. Courage to gather your evidence. Courage to walk away from toxic people no matter who they are or how much power they have. Courage to believe that you deserve better. And if you've made it this far in my story, I'd love to hear from you. Drop a comment below and tell me what part of this journey resonated with you most. Have you ever had to stand up to someone powerful? How did you find the strength? What advice would you give to someone facing a similar situation? If this story inspired you, or if you think it might help someone else who's going through a difficult time, please hit that like button and subscribe. Share it with anyone who might need to hear that they're not alone, that there is hope on the other side of the storm. Your engagement helps these stories reach more people who need them. Together, we can build a community where survivors support each other, where the truth matters, and where justice is possible. Thank you for listening to my story. Thank you for being here. And remember, you're stronger than you know.